Hi guys, it's Sybil and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm filming a highly requested video, which is how I aced the TOEFL writing section. So a lot of you guys have been asking for this video and here it is. So if you guys are new here, I have a few videos on my channel that explain how I scored a 117 out of 120 on the new TOEFL IBT exam. And I'm going to be linking these videos down below in the description box. So after you watch this video, make sure to head over there and pick up a few more tips and tricks that can help you get a better score on the TOEFL exam. But today, in this particular video, I'm going to be going through the exact template that I used to score a 29 out of 30 on the writing section, as well as some of my personal tips and pieces of advice that I feel like can really help you enhance your writing abilities and help you inch closer to your dream score on the TOEFL exam. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So before I share my template with you guys, I want to put a little disclaimer out there, which is that writing isn't something you can immediately excel at the second you start practicing. So don't be too hard on yourself when you're first starting out. Personally, I don't believe that practice makes perfect, but practice sure does help you get closer and closer to perfect if you put in the effort. So make sure to be patient with yourself and just start preparing for the writing section early on. I feel like a lot of us have this sense of urgency when we first start preparing for the TOEFL exam, and we want to see better results and we want to see them fast. So we start bombarding ourselves with all of these TOEFL practice tests before we're really even ready. But I think it's really important for us to do two things before we start testing our abilities with the TOEFL practice tests. The first thing you should be doing beforehand is doing free write practices. Now, I studied abroad in the States for a few years when I was younger, and I remember in English class we would do free writes almost daily. And that's really how I learned to refine my writing capabilities. When you're doing free write practices, you can literally write about anything. You can write your diary in English, or write a short story in English, or just pick a topic for yourself and write down your thoughts in English. And the whole point of this exercise is just to get you a bit more comfortable with expressing your ideas effectively in written English. I know it's really tough when you first start writing in your non-native language, but over time, if you do a lot of free write practices, you start becoming more familiar with the language and you start to realize your own writing style or the writing formats you like, which can really help you enhance your writing abilities when you're taking the TOEFL exam. If you guys don't really know how to start free writing or what to write about, I've linked a few resources down below in the description box, so definitely go take a look for some more inspiration. And the next thing you should be doing before taking TOEFL practice tests is reading more. So I really like to say you can't have output without any input, and this is extremely true when it comes to writing. By reading more, you can learn new vocabulary, new idioms, or even new sentence structures. The benefits are honestly endless, and if you really take time to digest these new things that you learn, you can incorporate it into your writing and just drastically improve the quality of your writing response. I know reading can seem like quite a hassle, especially when you're preparing for an exam, but honestly, it is one of the best ways to improve your writing, so I highly recommend you guys do this before you start taking practice tests. So if you guys don't really know where to start looking for good books or good news articles, I've linked a few of my favorite books and resources down in the description box below, so definitely check it out if you guys need some recommendations. In this section, I'm going to be explaining the template that I use for my own writing response, and I'm going to be using task 2, the independent writing task, as an example. So the writing topic for today is, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Technology has made the world a better place to live. Use specific reasons and examples to support your opinion. So for the introduction, I like to go with a really simple but effective hook, bridge, thesis structure. So starting off, we have the hook, which is the very first sentence of your entire essay. And its purpose is basically to just grab the reader's attention. And you can do this in a variety of ways. You can use a startling fact, or you can use a sentence that really draws out the empathy within your reader. No matter what type of hook you use, just make sure that it's engaging your audience and luring them into your essay, making them want to read it more. So moving on, we have the bridge, which is basically a sentence or a few sentences that you use to connect the hook with your thesis. In your bridge, you want to talk about how your hook relates or connects back to the main topic of your entire essay. The last section of your introduction will be your thesis, and the thesis is the most important part of your entire introduction. It's basically the sentence that tells readers what this essay is going to be about, as well as letting them know your standpoint on this issue. So with our example question, my thesis would look something like this. I believe that technology has made the world a better place to live as it connects the international community and improves global healthcare. So as you can see, I've included my main argument as well as my two supporting reasons in my thesis. So the thesis really has to let the reader know what exactly you're going to be talking about and your perspective as well. When I'm answering the independent writing task, I normally just like to include 2 reasons, since I think it's sufficient enough to get my point across and ensures that I still finish my entire writing response in time. So next up, we have the body paragraphs. And when I'm answering the TOEFL writing task, I like to include 2 body paragraphs, one for each of my supporting reasons. So the first sentence in my body paragraph will normally be a topic sentence. And this sentence just tells the reader what this paragraph is really going to be about. An example of a topic sentence would be, the advancement of technology has made it possible for global citizens to connect and collaborate across borders. So this is one of the supporting reasons I mentioned in the introduction, and I'm basically telling the reader that this entire paragraph will be me justifying and explaining this point I've made. The next section in my body paragraph will normally be an example as well as a following explanation. So this part is quite self-explanatory. I like to use the example to illustrate and justify my reason. Then I'll use an explanation to show how this example ties back and relates to my standpoint. And the very last sentence in my body paragraphs will be a concluding sentence. And this is basically just a sentence that sums up what this entire paragraph was about before you move on to your next point. So that is the structure of both of my body paragraphs. And the last section of our entire essay should be a conclusion. And normally it consists of 3 parts, being a thesis, a summary, and then a final concluding statement. So the thesis here is just like the thesis in our introduction, except you can use a different wording or sentence structure to really restate it. The purpose of this thesis is just to remind the readers what this essay was about and what your perspective on it was. Following up, I'll include a summary that talks about the points I mentioned in my body paragraphs before. And lastly, I like to just wrap up and package up the entire essay with a final concluding sentence. On the day of the TOEFL exam, if you realize that you're struggling with the time limit and you're really looking for a way to cut down your writing quantity so you can finish in time, I think you can definitely consider eliminating or simplifying the conclusion if you have to, because the conclusion is really just restating, re-emphasizing all of the points we already mentioned in this essay. So it's not as crucial or important as the body paragraphs and the introduction. So if you're in that situation, I definitely think a conclusion is something you can compromise on. So that is the entire template that I use when I was taking the TOEFL IBT exam. And I know that it looks like a fairly simple template. It's not really sophisticated. in a sense, but I promise it's sufficient enough for you to get your point across and let the graders know that you have no problem conveying your ideas or opinions in a written English format. So finally, we've made it to the most crucial section of this entire video, which is my personal tips that helped me score a 29 out of 30 on the writing section. So my first tip is think before you answer. Now, I know that sounds really cliche, but I promise you it's a life or death kind of tip. It's a lot of the times the deciding factor on whether or not your response is a good one, and I'm going to explain why. Obviously, TOEFL is a timed exam, so we often have this sense of urgency to quickly finish the test before time runs out. And so a lot of us rush to pick a standpoint before we even really think the question through. But what happens is if you start writing about a standpoint that you haven't really thought through and you get to the second body paragraph, you realize that you have no other example to support or justify this idea, it's obviously going to be a nightmare. So before you start writing, really take time to think about the two standpoints that you can choose from, as well as the reasons and examples that you can use to justify the standpoints. My second tip for you guys is to make an outline. So by making an outline, you can really have a clear picture of what your response is going to look like, as well as a blueprint that you can actually follow. So personally, what I like to do is I'll type my thesis on the very first line of my response, and then I'll type down the examples I thought of in simplified words, just to make sure that I don't forget them. Your outline should be fairly simple. It shouldn't be complicated at all, because the purpose is just for you to have a structure to follow when you're writing your response, as well as to help you remember your examples in case you forget. Now, the third tip is make sure your response actually answers the question. We've all had that experience before where we're just writing and suddenly we lose track of what we were even writing about in the first place. And sometimes we go so off topic that by the time we're done with the essay and we look back at the objective, we realize that we never even answered the question being asked of us. So in order to prevent that, make sure that you stop every once in a while just to check in and make sure that you're still following the correct writing objective. You can double check after every paragraph or after each section of writing, such as your hook, bridge, and thesis. Completely up to you, just regardless of how you do it, make sure that you're actually answering the question. So my next tip for you guys is don't overdo it. Now, I know a lot of us, when we're doing the writing response, suddenly we just want to add in a metaphor, a simile, or an idiom we saw somewhere into our writing because we think it's going to enhance our writing and impress the graders. But I'm going to be very extremely honest with you. Unless you're absolutely 100% sure that you're using it in the right context and using it in the right way, resist the urge to add it in there. The TOEFL graders really just want to know that you are fluent and capable of communicating your ideas in English. So they're not looking for some fancy, showy, sophisticated writing style that is absolutely unnecessary for you guys to get a high score on the TOEFL exam. So just focus on conveying your thoughts effectively and efficiently. So don't risk adding any embellishments that might not make sense unless you're really sure that it enhances the quality of your writing. And finally, we've made it to our last tip, which is to edit and revise. Make sure that you leave some time for you to go back and check your work, check if there are any silly grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes, and make sure that your response actually answered the question. All of us make little mistakes here and there, so make sure you give yourself that opportunity to go back, check, and revise your response so that you have a better chance of achieving a higher score. And with that said, we've finally reached the end of today's video. Thank you for being here with me today, and I hope you guys found this video helpful. Like always, if you guys have any questions, make sure to comment them down below so I can get back to you guys. And remember to check the description box for the other resources you can use to improve your TOEFL score. So that is it from me today, and if you guys like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe as well so you can see more of my future content. And truly, I hope you guys ace that TOEFL exam, and I'll see you guys in the next one.